Sign the divorce papers, you old hat. You and your daughter need to get out of this house.
Laughing, John thrust the divorce papers, already signed with his name, at me. Next to him stood his young mistress, Lisa, and their 3-year-old love child. Before I could say anything, my daughter, Emily, spoke up.
Leave? Dad, you don't know anything, do you?
And then, Emily revealed the truth, causing John and Lisa's faces to turn pale. My name is Kathy, 49 years old. John, a year older than me, and I had never been able to have children despite the years of marriage. Creating a happy family with John and children was always my dream.
We should pass on my superior genes to the next generation, right?
John would say, half jokingly. Both of us strongly desired children, so we never missed a chance to try. Yet, I had never managed to get pregnant. When we went for tests at the hospital, it turned out that the issue was mainly our compatibility and something in my body.
There's a good chance of having children if you continue with fertility treatments.
I had been encouraged by what the doctor said and had persevered with the treatments, while thanking John for his encouragement. Then, at 38, I finally got pregnant. When we found out, we both went wild with excitement. John often fantasized about how brilliant our child would be.
Maybe a doctor, a lawyer, or even a politician. Either way, he or she will be bound to be successful, right? He or she gotta get into a college with an SAT score over 1300. We need to start with high-quality early education.
As long as he or she is healthy and happy, that's all that matters to me. When I said this, John got defensive and argued.
Both of us graduated from top-tier universities. Our child has to be brilliant. Why settle for less?
I gave up arguing. Perhaps it's normal for parents to have high hopes for their children. No need to fret over it. Then came the time for childbirth. It was a difficult birth due to my age. Despite the intense pain, unlike anything I had experienced before, I was determined to see my child. We were blessed with a healthy baby girl, and John was overjoyed.
Our child at last. Look at her intelligent face.
I was incredibly happy too. From the time our daughter Emily was an infant, John started teaching her letters and object names, fully committed to her early education, as he had declared. It's too early for that.
Strike while the iron is hot. Our child is no ordinary kid.
Despite my caution, John wouldn't listen. However, when Emily was still under a year old, John was assigned to work abroad alone for a few years. The company showed little regard for an employee with a baby.
It's a sign that I'm valued. It's an opportunity for promotion.
So, John left for a distant overseas assignment for the sake of his career. I felt vulnerable. Was I to raise Emily alone from now on? Yet, I believed that maintaining a bond between him and his child was essential. I made sure Emily and John had daily video calls, telling Emily from a young age, "Daddy is working hard for you and me." Thanks to this, even though Emily hadn't seen John in person for years, she grew up adoring her father. She looked forward to video chatting with John every day and eagerly counted the days until his return. When John finally came back from his assignment, 4-year-old Emily ran to him and hugged him tight.
I'm home, Emily. Here comes Daddy.
John lifted her in his arms. I was thrilled too. At last, we were all together as a family. But the happy family time didn't last long.
Why can't you solve such a simple problem?
John's yelling and Emily's crying filled the air. When I rushed to see what was happening, John exploded in anger.
You've been neglecting Emily's education while I was away. She can't even write simple sentences, let alone spell basic words. And her math is just as bad. She got this simple addition wrong.
Wait a minute. Emily is only 4 years old. Isn't that normal? Don't be angry over such things. You're expecting too much.
Such things. I could do all this at her age. Don't lump Emily with ordinary kids. Our child, coming from us, can't be average at 4 years old. It's all because you didn't provide the right early education.
What? Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to make her feel close to you, John, while raising Emily on my own?
Don't make excuses. So, neglecting her academics is fine by you. I expected you more as a Princeton University grad, but apparently that was a mistake.
How dare you say that? All that matters is that our child is happy and healthy.
That's why Emily is falling behind. We're going to catch up on her learning now.
Since then, John started pushing Emily to study more. Emily liked drawing, but when John found her doing it, he got angry.
If you have time to draw, you should be studying.
John tore up her unfinished drawing and threw away her crayons. Then he forcibly made her sit at the desk and solve problems way beyond her level, scolding her.
Can't you even understand this? What a disappointment. Are you really my daughter?
Of course, I intervened, and arguments between us became frequent.
Emily hates me because I'm trying to teach her, but you've spoiled her.
It's not my fault. I raised Emily to love her father. She was always happy to see you on video calls, right? And when you came back, she ran to hug you, didn't she? Who turned her into a child who's scared of John.
So it's my fault now. The problem is Emily, who skips studying to draw all the time.
What's wrong with drawing? She's still so young. Let her do what she loves. And tearing up her drawings and throwing away her crayons is just cruel.
I'm not wrong. Drawing is a waste of time, especially when she's already behind in her studies.
Behind compared to you. She's not even below average.
Emily needs to be far above average. I'm doing this for her.
For her, you're just imposing your own ideals on Emily. It's your ego, not her benefit.
What did you say?
This approach is wrong. It will only make her hate studying. Just so you know, if you make Emily cry again, I'm filing for divorce. She doesn't need a father like you. John sighed heavily.
Fine, whatever. No matter how much I teach her, there's no improvement in her academics. It's a disappointment. Maybe it's true that children of older mothers just don't cut it. There's a higher risk of disabilities with late pregnancies. Maybe she's got one.
What did you say?
Yeah, maybe all the time and effort spent on fertility treatments were a waste. Why did I even marry someone who has trouble conceiving? It's too late to have another child now. What about my superior genes?
I was seething with anger at John's heartless mumbling. Since then, John rarely came home, using work as an excuse, and when he did, he hardly spoke to Emily. It seemed he had given up on expecting anything from her. For Emily and me, it was better this way. Thankfully, Emily could grow up doing what she loved, free from being forced to study. John showed no interest in her anymore. I no longer tried to bridge the gap between father and daughter, unlike before. We were both working, and I wouldn't struggle financially if we divorced. Yet, I didn't file for divorce, perhaps hoping that John might return to his kinder self, and that our family relationship could improve in the future. Or maybe it was just inertia. As time passed, Emily quickly turned 10. One day, after a long business trip, John suddenly returned home without notice. A young woman and an unfamiliar child emerged from his car. Before I could ask about them, John immediately said,
Kathy, I want a divorce.
"Wait, what? A divorce, just like that? And who are these people?"
I'll introduce them. Call Emily down.
Just then, Emily came downstairs, and the 5 of us sat on the couch to talk. In the discussion, only John was talking. He embraced a child's shoulders, turning to Emily, and said,
Let me introduce you. This is your brother, Luke.
Brother.
Yeah. He's my child with this lady here.
John said, pulling the woman closer to him. So, John had a secret child. Looking closer, Luke indeed resembled John a lot.
This Luke, unlike you, has been under my guidance since birth. Thanks to that, he's exceptionally talented and intelligent, unlike you. Just look at his smart expression. He's only 3, yet he can write simple sentences and do addition. Not to mention knowing the alphabet and simple words. Impressive, right? A far cry from the disappointment that you are.
I was speechless with John boasting about his secret child to Emily. Next, John introduced his mistress, Lisa, to me.
Lisa here gave birth to Lou. Having a child with someone other than you was the right decision, huh? Children from younger women are just different. Nothing like what an old hag like you could produce. And unlike you, she understands and agrees with my educational approach. She doesn't oppose me like you do. Young women are just more compliant. And their skin is so much smoother, just the best.
While John was talking, we remained silent. Meanwhile, Lisa looked smug, and the child seemed happy to be praised.
So, sign the divorce papers. You old hag and your daughter get out of the house. I'm going to live here happily with my young wife and talented son. From today on, Luke is my only child. The time I spent with you two was a complete waste.
John placed the divorce papers signed with his name on the table and slid them towards me. Before I could say anything, Emily spoke up.
Get out. Dad, you don't know anything, do you? The one leaving should be you because this house belongs to Mom.
John and Lisa were taken aback.
This house was given to Mom by Grandma and Grandpa. Right, Mom?
Exactly, Emily. This house, transferred to me by my parents before our marriage, is in my name. Don't you remember that? So much for your so-called brilliant mind.
Well, anyone could forget that. But how does Emily know about this?
Of course, I told her. Emily found that painting in the basement and asked about it. I pointed to a painting on the wall. Though old, it clearly depicted our house. There, a young me and my mother were playing in the yard, and my father was sitting on the terrace. The happy family painting even had my father's signature. Emily was delighted when she saw this. Grandpa loved painting too, didn't he?
Still love painting. Oh, is that why there are so many paintings around?
John looked around at the walls.
Really, these are wonderful paintings. Who's the artist? Do you know, John?
No, I don't know, but they're really lifelike and impressive.
At his words, Emily puffed her chest with pride.
These are my paintings.
What? Come on, don't joke around.
It's not a joke. Except for the one of Grandpa, I painted all of these.
There's no way you could paint at this level.
What Emily is saying is true.
What? So all of these are really? They don't look like a child's work.
Emily has always loved to paint, you didn't know, but she has developed her talent and now sweeps awards at various competitions. She's even been on TV.
On TV?
John, incredulous, quickly searched on his smartphone.
It's true. Emily's in the news as a little genius artist.
Some people recognized the value in Emily's paintings and bought them for a high price, about $3,000.
$3,000 for a kid's paintings? No way. I haven't heard anything about this.
You've always been indifferent to Emily. Plus, you said her drawings were worthless, tore them up, threw her crayons away. I thought someone like you wouldn't understand.
If she can paint like this, that's a different story. And she's even becoming famous as a genius artist. Right? Amazing, Emily. That's my daughter. I've always believed she would be successful from the moment she was born. This is the result of my upbringing.
What? Don't be ridiculous. It's the opposite. You always interfered, tried to crush her talent.
I didn't know she had such talent, so it can't be helped. Now that I know, as her father, I will further develop her talent. So let's hold off on that divorce.
Hey, John, that's not what you said earlier.
Lisa exclaimed angrily. I was appalled by John's selfish reasoning. Develop her talent, yeah, right. You'd just hurt her, stunt the growth of her talent.
Shut up. If you're gonna talk big and loud, tell me what kind of education you've given Emily to recognize and develop her talent. If you can do it, then I should be able to do it too.
John was shouting with a red face. I replied to him. I haven't done anything special. I just supported Emily in doing what she loves.
Then, with the right education, she could grow even more. She could be even more successful. If you guys want that, then I guess I can stay with you all.
John seemed determined to maintain his superiority. Fine by me. I've signed the divorce papers, so I'll be filing them to the district court now.
What? I told you to wait on the divorce. Why are you doing this on your own?
On my own. You were the one who signed the papers and thrust them at me. At that, John was at a loss for words. Lisa was shaking John.
You're going to divorce Kathy and marry me, right? You said Luke was your only child. You're not backing out now, are you? Huh?
Shut up. Just be quiet for a minute.
Don't take your frustration out on the young woman who gave you a talented son. Anyway, as you wished, we're getting divorced. So could you three please leave?
Wait, are you sure about this? Life will be tough if you divorce me.
We make enough money working together, and I can live without you.
You're okay with taking her father away from the child?
She's better off without a father like you. Besides, you said your only child is the talented Luck, Now that you know Emily has talent, you suddenly care. Well, it's too late.
Here, Dad, I'll show you my latest painting that won an award.
Emily went upstairs, came back with a painting. I knew exactly which one she would bring. She grinned and unfolded the painting for John and Lisa.
This one's called Shade of Love.
Seeing the painting, John and Lisa froze, turning pale. No wonder. It depicted them. In the painting, John and Lisa were holding hands and leaning close, but their expressions and the shadows cast suggested their love was anything but pure. Their realistic details, right down to the wrinkles, made them even more uncomfortable. It was hard to believe a 10-year-old had painted it. I knew about your affair for a while. I even hired a detective to take photos, and Emily saw them and painted this. By the way, this painting won first prize at a county art competition and is displayed in a museum. So, you both are sort of famous as the models in this painting.
That's why people were staring at us. We're exposed in a museum. No.
Lisa screamed, causing the child to cry in shock.
Hey, this is not a joke. What were you thinking, exposing this painting to the public?
Well, I thought you and that lady made a great subject for a painting.
Emily replied nonchalantly. This meant John could no longer boast about being the father of a genius artist. He must have realized this. Look, just go. I think you understand, but I'll be filing for alimony from both you and Lisa, and child support from you, John. I kicked them out of the house, feeling drained. Emily and I then went to the district court to submit the divorce papers. Later, through a lawyer, I demanded a hefty alimony from John and Lisa, including child support for Emily for sure. John, who earned well, paid the alimony for both himself and Lisa in a lump sum, and agreed to monthly child support payments. A year later, Emily and I were living comfortably in our house when John showed up out of the blue.
It's been a while. You guys haven't been struggling without me, have you? I can come back.
John's still talking down to me as usual, but his appearance is a mess like I've never seen before. His clothes are all tattered, his hair's a mess, and his eyes look empty and sunken. It was clear something had happened. Ignoring his appearance, I responded, "We're not struggling at all. I got a promotion and a raise, and Emily is further developing her artistic talent. More people are buying her paintings, so we're fine. You, Lisa, and your talented Luke must be living happily too." I assumed John had officially married Lisa by then. Hearing this, John broke down and begged to be taken back.
Please, let me be part of your family again. I have no one else but you two.
Confused, I decided to listen to his story. It seemed John regretted not becoming the father of a genius artist. Moreover, in his and Lisa's circle, many parents were investing in early education, and children with Luke's level of ability weren't uncommon. In reality, they had willingly connected with such people. Suddenly, the academic abilities of Luke that John had boasted about no longer seemed rare or exceptional to him.
If Emily can do it, Luke should be able to as well.
John tried to make Luke paint, but his approach was harsh. John took away the picture book Luke was reading, dragged him in willingly to a canvas, handed him a paintbrush, and yelled at him to paint. If he didn't like the painting, he would tear it up and scream at him.
Don't mess around. You're terrible. Why can't you paint exactly what you see? You won't beat your sister like this. Why such awful colors? You're a disappointment, a stupid son.
John compared and berated him.
I hate you, Dad.
Luke became completely frightened and started sobbing. Hearing this, John yelled even more, repeating the same mistakes he made with Emily, but he never realized it. The difference was Lisa's obedience to John. Unlike me, she never tried to stop him.
Just do as your father says. Don't make him angry.
Instead, it seemed she was saying that to Luke. No one stopped John's rampage, and it wasn't long before it turned violent.
Luke is only 3 years old. If he starts drawing high-level paintings now, he can become a younger genius artist than Emily. He can surpass her and show them all.
John was obsessed with this idea and subjected Luke to an almost bullying form of education day after day. Eventually, neighbors reported John's actions as abuse, and Luke was taken into Child Protective Services.
I'm just educating my beloved son,
John claimed, but his argument was completely disregarded. Deeply saddened by the separation from her son, Lisa repeatedly appealed to the Child Protective Services to return Luke to her. The staff explained to her that what John was doing qualified as educational abuse, and that unless she divorced John, they could not return Luke. These words were a wake-up call for Lisa, and she decided to divorce John.
Please divorce me. I can't stand to see Luke being bullied by you anymore. I've been a bad mother for not protecting him. I believed, or tried to believe, in your so-called education. But it was wrong.
John was shocked and furious when the obedient Lisa he knew demanded a divorce.
Don't joke with me. Are you complaining about my education now too? I'm doing it for Luke's sake.
For Luke's sake? No, it was to compete against Emily and Kathy. For your own sake.
Shut up. Your obedience was what I liked about you. Don't go against me. Just stay quiet and obey.
However, Lisa's resolve did not waver. And if anything, her decision to divorce only grew stronger.
I've always hated that about you. I just couldn't say it, and that's why things ended up like this. So, let's get divorced.
Are you stupid? You don't work. You're a stay-at-home mom. How will you live without me after the divorce? Especially since you've been disowned by your parents over the affairs, secret child, and marriage stealing.
Then I'll just have to work. I'll put Luke in daycare and work. I'll try to apologize to my parents. Even if it means working in a nightclub. It's better than this.
You want to take Luke's father away from him that badly, after we finally got officially married.
Yes, I do. Better to have no father than one like you.
John must have felt dizzy hearing the same words he once heard from me. Ultimately, Lisa managed to take Luke back from Child Protective Services and moved out. John refused to accept the divorce and fought for custody of Luke, thinking his financial advantage would win. However, the courts recognized his abuse, and Lisa was granted custody.
It's not abuse. It's education.
John protested, but again, his argument was not acknowledged. Desperate for visitation rights, which were also denied, John faced cold treatment at work due to the scandal, leading to mistakes, a pay cut, and a demotion. As for Lisa, she reconciled with her estranged parents, who now help take care of Luke while she works hard.
The Child Protective Services, the family court, Lisa, my colleagues, none of them understand. I'm not abusing anyone. Luke was wrongfully taken into custody. And yet, everyone is treating me like the bad guy.
I was completely dumbfounded. Even now, this man didn't understand what he did wrong. He didn't understand, and that's why he repeated his mistakes. It seemed futile to say anything, but I couldn't hold back. You're treating the child like a tool to satisfy your own ego without considering his feelings. Just go. Don't show yourself in front of Emily again. You have no place here anymore. With my cold voice, John left in shock, staggering away. Later, I heard from an acquaintance that John is now claiming on social media about kidnapping by Child Protective Services and child abduction by his wife. I saw John's social media account through the acquaintance.
I was accused of child abuse and my son was kidnapped. You can't even scold your child anymore. My first wife took my daughter, and now my second wife took my son, and I'm not allowed to see them. My daughter and son both loved and adored me. They must be wanting to see me. Child abduction is a crime. There should be joint custody. The family court only recognizes mothers for custody. It's messed up.
He kept repeating such claims, and it scared me. I abducted my daughter. Who was it that abandoned his daughter and declared in front of her that his only child was Luke? The person who turned Emily and Luke against their father was none other than himself. Though it's hard to give up the house given by my parents, I decided to move to ensure John couldn't follow us. Will John continue to live blaming everyone else for his situation without ever realizing his own faults? Blaming me, Lisa, his daughter, his son, child services, the court, sole custody, society, and more. Emily and I decided to expose John's actions on social media. John gains sympathy and understanding from his circle on social media. However, he keeps repeating the same claims at work, becoming increasingly isolated, and I heard he's on the verge of being fired due to negligence.
I won't allow you to go back to your hometown for childbirth.
That's what my mill told me, so I reluctantly canceled my plans to go back to my hometown for the birth. After the birth, when my mother came to help, my husband flew into a rage, saying, "What? Of course, I'm upset. Why are you doing things on your own?" Furthermore, my mill started into saying, "You're our DIL, aren't you? Why are you letting strangers into our house?" And she ended up driving my mother away. I'm just furious with these selfish people. I'll never forgive this. My name is Jessica. I'm a 27-year-old stay-at-home mom. Until last year, I was working at a company, but I quit when I got pregnant. I thought about taking maternity leave, but I decided I wanted to focus on childcare. My husband, Ethan, was supportive of this decision. Ethan does express concern about my health, asking, "Are you okay?" But he's just saying that. He doesn't take any action. I would be happy if he helped with things like taking out the trash, cleaning up after meals, vacuuming, or hanging the laundry. But he doesn't do any household chores at all. Apparently, his mother did everything for him, and he was raised being told that he didn't have to do anything. Ethan has completely taken on his mother's attitude, always saying, housework is the wife's job. Even when we were both working before the pregnancy, I was the one doing all the household chores. Even if Ethan got home early and I was working late, he would be lounging on the sofa, fiddling with his phone, and asking me as soon as I got home, "Isn't dinner ready yet?" Or "You better do the laundry quickly or it won't dry." I had given up expecting anything from him, but I thought surely things would change once I got pregnant. However, Ethan didn't change at all. In fact, he's become even more troublesome.
Do you think our child is more important than me? Don't neglect me just because we have a child.
These are some of the things my husband says, and I'm very fed up with it. He doesn't help with anything, and yet I'm immobilized by morning sickness. What am I supposed to do? The solution I came up with was to ask for help from my mother. My parents' house is just a 10-minute bike ride away. Fortunately, my mother, who is in her mid-50s, is still very active and rides her bike smoothly. When I'm feeling too sick to move, I ask her to help with shopping, cooking, and cleaning the house. But it's only occasionally, not every day. Ethan doesn't like this arrangement. When I tell him that my mother came over, he gets furious.
Why are you letting a stranger into our house?
Stranger? She's my mother. Your mom comes over too, doesn't she?
It's different with my parents. You married into our family, so your own mother has become a stranger. Don't call her over without my permission.
What kind of outdated thinking is this? Sometimes I wonder if Ethan is actually in his 60s, not his 20s. While holding my forehead in frustration, I think about this absurd logic. I wouldn't need to ask my mom for help if you did something. I feel nauseous from morning sickness, and it's hard to even move. If you were more considerate of me, I wouldn't need to call my mom. I argued back, but Ethan retorted, "Why should I, tired from work, have to do anything? You're a monster." I have so much I want to say, but getting more worked up would affect the baby. Stress is the last thing I need during pregnancy, but it seems to be constantly there, thanks to my husband.
I don't want to face your parents. Make sure they're gone before I get home, okay?
And with that awful remark, Ethan left for work. As usual, he left without cleaning up after breakfast. While I was sighing and placing the used dishes in the sink, I thought, I want to go home, and felt an urge to return to my hometown soon. But honestly, I can understand not wanting to meet the in-laws too much. No matter how good the relationship is, they are still people with whom you have no blood relation. However, if he dislikes my parents and doesn't want them at our house, then it should be fair.
Just stopped by nearby, got tired, need to rest.
Thinking this with a forced smile on my face, I faced Dorothy, my mill, who arrived suddenly without any notice. Even when I messaged my husband, "Your mom came over without calling first," he just replied, "What's the problem with my mom coming over?" There is a big problem.
It's hot today, I'm so thirsty. Jessica, get me some cold juice.
I only have coffee.
What? Such an inconsiderate DIL. Then go buy it.
Wait, I should go?
Who else is here? You're not expecting me, an old lady, to go, are you? That's ridiculous.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Expecting a pregnant woman to go shopping, that's ridiculous. Dorothy always shows up unannounced, demanding one thing after another. Sometimes she stays for lunch too. Even when I suggest getting takeout, she says, "Don't waste my son's hard-earned money. At least cook something." I'm pregnant and exhausted. But when I mention using the money I earned while I was working, she'd say, then get the best quality lobster. You know, I sometimes feel like giving her a knuckle sandwich right on her temple. It's not just that. I can't clean or do laundry as I'd like, so naturally the house is a mess. Seeing this, Dorothy says, at least do some cleaning, and makes me do it. With my belly getting bigger, even vacuuming is a struggle. Yet, Dorothy demands perfection, saying, "What are you looking at? There's dust at your feet?" Even when I ask her to let me know before she comes, she retorts, "Why do I need to inform anyone before visiting my son's house? You know, if I weren't pregnant, I might want to put a wrestling move on her." And it's not just Dorothy who suddenly intrudes. My sil, Maria, who's actually my husband's biological sister, does the same. Maria is currently 21 years old. After dropping out of college and graduating from a vocational school, she's living a lazy, unemployed life at her parents' house. She claims she's in the midst of bridal training, but lounging around at our place makes me wonder really in what way. Like Dorothy, she demands meals, but when asked to help, she peeled potatoes to the size of taro roots. When I asked her to add roux to the beef stew, she used up all the newly bought roux. Her excuse as she fled was, "I'm still training." What kind of training is she doing at her parents' house? Peeling vegetables an inch thick, enduring overly salty beef stew? It's obviously unhealthy, and there's no way I, a pregnant woman, can eat it. Of course, neither Dorothy nor Maria ate it, so the food was just wasted. And whenever they come to our house, they lounge around for hours and don't leave. When I ask if it's okay to leave John, my Phil, alone, Dorothy says he likes being alone, but I know her phone is constantly ringing. I caught a glimpse of her phone display, and the caller was John. Clearly, he's telling her to come home soon. In the end, they both stay until Ethan comes home, and if I'm too tired to prepare dinner, all three go out to eat. What about my dinner? This is the worst. So, with all this going on, I'm really frustrated with Ethan, who is cold to my mother and only cares about his own parents and sister. I'm also angry with brazen Dorothy and Maria. I was thinking of returning to my hometown soon, but then Dorothy said something outrageous.
It's our precious first grandchild. How can you even think of going back to your hometown for childbirth? First birth, that's no concern of mine. I raised 2 children myself, and I commend you not to go back. Stay at home.
I protested against this, but Ethan was of no help, siding with his mother, saying, "Mom is right." Dorothy wouldn't listen to reason. Maria echoed the same sentiments. Realizing it was futile, I agreed to forego going back to my hometown. But when I suggested that my mother help after the baby was born, that was also rejected. This is ridiculous. Time for some drastic measures. Eventually, I safely gave birth to my daughter. She was the first grandchild for both families, and everyone was overjoyed. I was happy, of course, but even more relieved that she was finally here. I had planned to focus on recovering my strength until discharge. But of course, Dorothy and Maria just had to show up unannounced. And not just any time, but outside visiting hours. Completely unacceptable. And then they both have the nerve to say, "What's with that face, Jessica? We're here. You should be happier. There's no vending machine in this hospital. Jessica, we'll look after the baby. Go and buy us something," Maria demanded, nearly pushing me to the edge. But before I could react, a nurse lost her temper, and the two were practically kicked out of the hospital. Unhappy with that, they bombarded me with calls and messages all night. I had turned off my phone, so seeing the history the next morning was quite shocking. And so, I was discharged in that situation. I wondered what would happen next, but surprisingly, Dorothy and Maria didn't show up. Apparently, John, my Phil, had scolded them to be more considerate. John, good job. While it was a relief that Dorothy and Maria weren't around, back at home, my useless and even more troublesome husband was waiting. As soon as I returned home with the baby, he said, "Hurry up and make some food." The future didn't look bright. So, starting the next day, Margaret, my mother, began coming over to help. "She's adorable, looks just like you were as a baby," Margaret said, her face beaming with joy. I really wanted her to stay over instead of just visiting, but I couldn't impose on her that much. And then there was Ethan to consider. I knew for sure he would start complaining if he bumped into her. So, she had to leave before Ethan got back home. When Margaret was about to leave, an hour before Ethan's usual return time, he unexpectedly came home. "Why? What are you doing home early?"
Well, my boss told me to come home early since the baby was born, so lucky me.
"Lucky? No way. You don't do anything, so there's no need for you to come home early." I couldn't complain since his boss was being considerate, but this unexpected turn of events left me flustered. And there, Ethan and Margaret faced each other.
"Why is your mother here?"
Ethan looked startled. Then, from behind him, "What? Jessica's mom is here." Now it was my turn to be taken aback. To my surprise, Dorothy peeked out from behind Ethan. And then Maria appeared as well. Weren't they supposed to be laying low after John scolded them? Wait, John is on a business trip, and they decided to come over. Margaret, caught in this unbelievable situation because of Ethan, Dorothy, and Maria. I thought Ethan would at least pretend to be nice in front of my mom, but he made an obviously displeased face upon seeing her.
"Why is your mother here?"
I asked her to help because postpartum has been tough.
"What? Of course, I don't like her coming over without asking. I've told you this before, haven't I? Why do you do things on your own?"
Ethan frowned at my response. His face was so infuriating. He glared at me with a look as if he had just sucked on an incredibly sour lemon. But, I desperately wanted to yank on Ethan's annoying face, but I restrained myself and tried to argue back when Dorothy pushed him aside and stepped forward.
Wait a minute, Jessica. Do you even understand your place?
As soon as she stepped up, she pointed her finger at me and accused. My place?
You're part of our family now, right? Why are you letting a stranger into our house?
No, that's my mother.
The moment you got married, you became our DIL, and your real home became here, with me as your parent. Don't do things on your own.
But I'm still recovering from giving birth.
So I can't stand it. Modern DIL are so unreasonable. Back in my day, even postpartum, everything in the house was done perfectly. I mean, when I...
Oh, this is going to be a long story. It's tough listening to this when I'm still feeling weak postpartum. Just as I was thinking this, Dorothy said, "We can lecture her later." To my astonishment, suddenly Dorothy began pushing my mother, Margaret, from behind. "Wait, what are you doing, Dorothy?"
We'll take care of our precious grandchild. You, stranger, please leave.
She said that and pushed my mother out. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, my mother left without saying a word. How could you? My mother was just trying to help me. I glared at Dorothy and Ethan, outraged by their behavior. But it was 2 against 1.
Just sit down over there.
Under the glare of Dorothy, Ethan, and Maria, I was forced to sit formally and endlessly lectured, struggling postpartum. What followed was hell. Dorothy and Maria came over almost every day. Sometimes they even stayed overnight. But they did nothing, just lounged around. When they were hungry, they made me go shopping or cook. They left their mess for me to clean up, and the laundry was also my responsibility. Cleaning the dirty house, of course, fell to me. On top of that, they only sporadically cared for the baby, mostly neglecting her. I found myself single-handedly managing the household chores, taking care of Dorothy and Maria, and tending to the baby. I was in a situation where collapsing wouldn't have been surprising, but I somehow held on. It was pure stubbornness. A stubbornness that said I wouldn't be defeated by such people. With determination and grit, I somehow survived those hellish days. And then, 5 years passed. I am now 32, and my lovely daughter Emma is 5 years old. Girls mature fast, I had heard, but I was really feeling it now. She had become quite articulate, and typical of today's girls, very strong-willed. After being toughened by the hellish days with Ethan, Dorothy, and Maria, I made sure to raise Emma so she wouldn't be influenced by those 3. The result?
Emma, can you go buy some candy for Grandma?
No.
My 5-year-old daughter splendidly refused to run errands for a grandma who tried to send a child shopping.
Emma, can you give Daddy a shoulder massage?
No.
Ethan, who remained unchanged even after our child was born, still did neither housework nor child care. He never changed a diaper. He never took her to the park. On weekends, he either went out alone or just lounged around at home. So naturally, Emma didn't grow close to him.
Emma, can you massage Grandma's shoulders?
Absolutely not. No.
Despite Dorothy's persistent attempts, Emma naturally didn't warm up to her. Inside, I laughed devilishly, relishing Dorothy and Ethan's obliviousness.
What's wrong with your daughter, Jessica?
Dorothy was furious, but I could easily brush off her comments, feeling my newfound strength.
She's become disrespectful because you started working early and left her in daycare.
Well, what can I say? She's sweet to me. Maybe she just doesn't like your face, Dorothy.
What did you just say?
I had blurted out my true feelings, but instead of panicking, I found myself laughing at Dorothy's red-faced anger. I had truly become stronger. Realizing arguing was futile, Dorothy just glared at me but said nothing more. Seizing the opportunity, I tried to get back to work on my computer when suddenly, Dorothy started a new topic. You know, Maria just gave birth. I tried to ignore her, but she abruptly closed my laptop. Even as I glared at her, wondering what she was doing, Dorothy remained unfazed. She continued to disrupt my work, turning to talk to Ethan.
The marriage order may have been different, with the pregnancy coming first, but it's still a happy occasion. I'm thinking of going to the hospital tomorrow. Ethan, will you join?
I realized that arguing with Dorothy's actions was pointless. Instead, I replied with a sly smile. Oh yes, I've heard about that. Congratulations.
Since you have a job and earn, you should give a generous gift.
But Dorothy, you won't be able to see Maria, being a stranger and all.
What?
A gift, really. I have no interest in celebrating strangers.
What are you talking about, even if Maria is your sil?
No, Dorothy. Didn't you tell me? Once married, a DIL belongs to her husband's family, and her own family becomes strangers. Remember how you chased my mother away, calling her a stranger?
What?
Maybe Dorothy had forgotten, but I hadn't, even after 5 years. Faced with my stare, Dorothy faltered.
Jessica, what are you saying?
You said it too, right? When Ethan tried to back up Dorothy, I glared at him, making him falter as well. You said my parents are strangers, didn't you? You wouldn't let them see Emma. You left me alone postpartum, forcing out my mother who was trying to help, while you and your family did nothing but exploit me. Ethan, you didn't help either, did you?
What? But you're the wife.
Gotcha. I recorded that on my phone, because you're the wife. So you all think a DIL should naturally serve her in-law's family, right? That she shouldn't rely on her own parents, right? Then the same should apply to your daughter Maria. I said this with a sly grin, phone in hand. Ethan and Dorothy panicked.
Hey, don't mess around. This situation with my sister Maria and you is different.
That's right, Maria is my dear daughter. Don't be ridiculous.
They both started blaming me. I calmly set my phone on the table, took a sip of tea, and I took a deep breath before shouting, "You two are the ridiculous ones." They both jumped back in shock. With a thud, I put one foot on the low table and rested my elbow on my knee. I glared fiercely at the two of them, who were practically losing their balance in front of me. Take responsibility for your own words. Grown-ups shouldn't be spouting such nonsense.
Oh, sorry, so sorry.
Don't think an apology will fix this. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. As I chuckled menacingly, their faces turned pale. I was well aware of the villainous look on my face. You turned my own parents away, so now it's only fair that you deal with the consequences. Only John needs to visit Maria's baby. Need help? You don't need that, do you? I've already informed John why you won't be going to Maria's. I'm sure the news will quickly reach Maria's husband.
What did you say?
By the way, I've recorded this entire conversation and plan to send the audio to Maria's husband.
What?
It's amazing what you can do with just a phone these days. Collecting evidence is a breeze. As I smirked, Dorothy teared up. So, Emma and I will be leaving this house.
What?
Ethan's dumbfounded voice echoed as I announced our departure.
Leaving? What are you talking about?
I have a good job now and my own income. I'll take child support, but I don't need you anymore.
What?
You never helped with the house, showed no care for me, were indifferent to parenting, didn't play with Emma, and we barely talk. Do you think such a husband is necessary?
I do.
As Ethan nodded vigorously to my question, I shouted back, I don't, and grabbed Emma's hand.
Emma, you want to be with Daddy, right?
In desperation, Ethan tried to cling to our daughter as his last resort. But
I don't need you.
Ethan slumped in defeat. I had planned to leave Ethan if he retaliated against my actions. Once I heard Maria was pregnant, I started planning to leave the house. I had already found a new place. Soon after, Emma and I left the house. Negotiations for lawyers concluded, and Ethan successfully became my ex-husband. Distrusting him, I demanded a lump sum for child support. Ethan was left with nothing. Our joint savings were divided, but Ethan had hardly saved anything. John, my former Phil, ended up covering the shortfall in child support. He had always been displeased with Ethan and Dorothy's behavior. John, too, was reportedly fed up with the selfishness of Ethan and Dorothy, the like-minded parent and child. John and Dorothy also ended up divorcing. There was a division of property, but Dorothy, who had never worked, struggled to live on her own. She eventually moved in with Ethan, but they were burdened with debts to John and lived in poverty. Eventually, Ethan and Dorothy ended up moving into a shabby apartment together. There, the two of them are said to be shivering in the drafty apartment, surviving on simple meals every day. Maria, my former Sil, also divorced. Her marriage was based on a pregnancy, and her lack of domestic skills was later discovered. Her husband took care of the house, but Maria took advantage and neglected their baby. One day, she was caught leaving the child alone for hours to gamble, leading to divorce and the husband taking custody. Maria, too, joined Ethan and Dorothy in their impoverished apartment. With Dorothy and Maria's lack of income, Ethan couldn't sustain a decent life. Their utilities were cut off, and they live in poverty now. This information came from John. It was a case of reaping what they sowed, and I couldn't help but laugh. As for Emma and me, we're enjoying our life together. Our new home is close to my parents, and they frequently visit us. Emma loves her grandparents who play with her, and she's very attached to them. In stark contrast to her expressionless and cold demeanor towards Ethan and Dorothy, Emma is a childlike child, hugging my mother with a smile. Seeing Emma's smile, I think to myself that divorcing was the right decision. As I hope Emma doesn't end up like Ethan and others who can't do anything, I hear her voice saying, "Mom, I cleaned up my plates properly. Now I'm going to fold the laundry." Even without parents, a child can still grow up well. Seeing my daughter growing up so wonderfully, I gently wiped away a tear of happiness.
I gave my daughter, Lily, $5 to buy some bread she wanted. After a while, Lily came back home, but she didn't have any bread with her. Huh? Did you get lost?
Nope.
Was your favorite panda-shaped bread sold out?
I don't know. I didn't go inside the bakery.
What? You didn't go to the bakery?
I did, but...
Lily looked like she was about to cry. Then she said to me,
Mom, I want you to divorce Dad.
"We're not getting a divorce, honey."
But Dad is.
With that, Lily started crying with sobs. My name is Natalie. I'm 30 and work as a dental hygienist. My husband, Kenny, is 32 and works as a caregiver. And we have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, making us a family of 3. Kenny and I met at the hospital where I used to work. There, I was a dental assistant, and he was a caregiver. After dating for a year, Kenny proposed to me, and we got married. He didn't say anything special, but I loved my job and didn't want to give up my career just because I got married, so I continued working at a nearby dental clinic. Even after getting pregnant with Lily, I kept working thanks to the understanding of my workplace. And after taking a few months off for maternity leave, I've now been back at the same dental clinic for 7 years. Kenny also advanced in his career as a caregiver, even handling night shifts and working hard. Our daughter Lily is girlish, charming, and we have been a very close and open family. Lately, Lily's big thing is playing detective. It seems like it's all influenced by popular anime, where they bring everything to deduction and expose, even spreading in nurseries.
Lily, try to guess words for dinner tonight.
Okay. Let me think. I'll ask Mom for some clues.
Great, counting on you.
Hey Mom, what's for dinner tonight?
Playing detective, huh? Well, it's something slurpy with brown meat on top.
I got it. Spaghetti.
Maybe. That's the only clue. Try to guess.
I'll think about it with Dad.
Like this, my husband really takes good care of our daughter. She loves her dad a lot, and it warms my heart to see them playing together. It's not always detective games. Being an active girl, she loves the park too. When I want to catch up on housework on my days off from work, my husband often takes her to the park. I take her too, but since he often has afternoons off, I leave it to him a lot. At the park, we usually hang out with a set group of mom friends, and Sarah and her mom, Emily, are who we play with most. Sarah is in the same class as my daughter at preschool, and us moms are the same age, and the dads know each other too. Sometimes, we even go on family picnics together. My husband and Emily get along well, and when they're at the park together, they watch the kids, which lets me leave my daughter with him confidently.
Mom? Today, Sarah and I built a castle again.
Oh, I wish I could have seen that castle.
It was really fancy. Sarah's mom said so too.
Great. Next time we'll make one for you to see.
I can't wait. This way, my daughter always tells me about her day, which has become a routine. I've grown to feel completely at ease with her open communication. Speaking of being open, Emily is the same. To put it nicely, she's open. To put it bluntly, she's chatty and tells my husband and me everything. I've quietly thought to myself that Emily is not someone to tell secrets to. The other day, this happened.
My husband was cheating, you know.
What? Is it okay to tell me this?
It's fine. It's mostly resolved now.
Really? Is Sarah okay with it?
Well, yeah. I managed to smooth things over, so it should be fine.
Hey, what's cheating?
Oh, Lily, it's nothing.
It's okay, Natalie. Cheating means, like, when dad likes someone who is not mom. It's something you should never do.
What happens if you cheat?
Well, maybe he would have to say goodbye to me and Sarah.
Huh?
Lily ran off to swing with Sarah, seemingly not fully grasping the concept. I thought it wasn't necessary to explain it so explicitly to a 6-year-old, but Emily must have had her reasons.
Besides, it's resolved for now. But if my husband messes up again and we end up divorcing, explaining the sudden absence of dad would be hard, right?
That might be true, but
if that happens, I'll be the one in financial trouble. So I need to think ahead.
Thinking about it in advance seems like bad luck.
But, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
That's true, but we have to make sure Sarah isn't affected by it.
Yay, that's the best way to handle it.
I figured I'd better not have to teach my daughter about those kinds of things, while also wondering how Emily's family resolved their issue. But other people's business is their business. I decided not to pry too much. Emily works part-time at a local bakery. That's quite popular, and we often stop by there after work to buy bread. One day, my daughter wanted some bread, so I gave her $5 and sent her to Emily's bakery to pick out her favorite. She came back home after a while, but without any bread. Huh? Did you get lost?
No,
Was your favorite panda bread sold out?
I don't know. I didn't go inside the bakery.
What? You didn't go to the bakery?
I did, but
Lily seemed on the verge of tears. Then she said something to me.
Mom, I want you to divorce Dad.
What?
Dad doesn't love you, so I want you to divorce him.
We are not getting a divorce, honey.
But Dad is.
Before she could finish, Lily started crying with little sobs. Shocked, I asked her what happened. It's okay, Lily. Let's have a big hug. What happened, sweetie?
Well, near the bakery, in a hard-to-see place, I saw Dad and Emily hugging.
What?
They were saying I love you and kissing.
Kissing. I felt dizzy with disbelief. Emily and my husband, of all places, right there on the street. But Lily is only 6. There could be a mistake. I decided to devise a plan to get proof. Hey, you have a day off after your night shift tomorrow, right? Lily is supposed to stay at Sarah's house. Can you take her?
Yeah, sure. Leave it to me.
Kenny seemed oddly cheerful, but that might just be my imagination. The important thing was to proceed with the plan. I had already asked Emily to look after Lily, and I hung a recorder around her neck and hid it in her clothes. I also told her to keep what she saw at the bakery a secret. If you're busy, you can come back right away. I've asked Emily to take care of things.
That's fine. I need a break anyway, so I'll have some fun with them.
I'm sorry to bother you on your day off. I'm counting on you.
Don't worry about it. Just focus on your work.
Really? Thanks. You always help me out.
Leave it to me. Let's have a blast, Lily.
My husband seemed unusually cheerful. I felt my blood boil at the thought of him meeting Emily, but I held it in. That day, I worried that Lily might spill everything while I was at work, but I managed to get through the day as it was busy. When I got home, my husband and Lily were already there, and Lily had a sad look on her face again. My husband, on the other hand, was visibly in a good mood. I desperately suppressed my emotions and prepared dinner for my husband and Lily. I also gave Lily some pudding for dessert to cheer her up. Since my husband had an early shift the next day, I put Lily to bed early and decided to listen to the recording from the recorder. As expected, it was a conversation between Emily and my husband that sounded like a love scene. It was a conversation that only a very discerning child would understand. Given that their voices sounded distant, they were probably having their tryst in another room. I couldn't forgive the two of them for doing such things under the same roof as our child. To call it disgusting. But they seemed to be having a great time to the point where I couldn't even think about such things. As I listened to the recording, I noticed that Lily seemed aware of the recording and was not talking much with Sarah. I felt anger welling up inside me, thinking about how they were making our child uncomfortable with their actions. I hated myself for even slightly suspecting my daughter. Though she's only 6 years old, she's a thoughtful and insightful child. I have to find a way to separate from my husband and ensure that it doesn't affect my daughter's future. And it involves Sarah's family too. Since Emily also has a husband, it becomes a case of double infidelity. It might be a good idea to consult Emily's husband as well. I decided to also choose the timing of my husband's and Emily's 2 jobs, and I'm going to let Emily's husband know about it. He was furious and apologized to me. He seemed crestfallen, thinking perhaps Emily was holding a grudge from his past infidelity. I convinced him by saying, "This time, it's about both of our families, so let's handle the conversation properly." We proceeded with the conversation under the assumption of divorce, with full cooperation. Starting with Emily's family. When Emily's husband broached the subject, Emily initially tried to deny it, but gradually her expression soured, and eventually she admitted it. Since Emily works part-time, she can live on her own. Her husband, considering his past mistakes, contacted me to say they decided to start over and forgive each other, which I agreed was for the best, because I wanted Sarah to be the happiest she could be. But in our case, it's different. My daughter witnessed what happened between my husband and Emily, and I have my own job and financial independence. I absolutely refuse to silently accept this situation and suffer in silence. First, I confronted my husband and verified the truth. At first, my husband, like Emily, claimed not to know what I was talking about, but as I played the recording, his expression stiffened gradually. Ultimately, he admitted to cheating with Emily as well. However, the surprising thing was the duration of the affair with Emily. It turns out they met before my husband and I did. I had heard that Emily used to work as a caregiver back then, and it seems that's when it started. Although they weren't dating at the time, they were maintaining such a relationship. Eventually, both Emily's husband and I came into the picture, marrying different people. Hearing that made me feel betrayed for so long. However, my daughter Lily and Sarah are undeniably our children respectively. I resolved to ensure the happiness of each of our children. First, I informed my husband of my intention to divorce and consulted a lawyer. While I am financially independent, I wanted an apology from my husband. He agreed to pay child support of $600 per month until our daughter reaches adulthood. Next is Emily's turn. Considering the long history and the double infidelity, the court-ordered compensation amounted to $50,000. With support from her family and her husband, Emily paid the compensation in a lump sum to me and moved far away with her family. However, life afterwards seemed quite difficult. I heard through the grapevine that Emily struggled to find a job after the move and resumed her work as a caregiver. However, the physical labor of being a caregiver while raising a young daughter turned out to be more demanding than she expected, and she fell ill. She managed to give birth to her second child, but it further strained their finances, leading the couple to seek refuge with her husband's parents. Despite knowing the reasons behind their situation, they were subjected to snide remarks from their in-laws. Shortly after giving birth, Emily resumed work as a caregiver, but her health deteriorated again. She seems to have separated from her two children and is taking refuge in her parents' home for recovery. Eventually, I heard that Emily and her husband divorced. Emily ended up giving up not only her own life and money, but also her precious family. That wasn't what I had hoped for, but if it was a path she chose for herself, then there's nothing to be done about it. I heard that Emily's husband and his parents are raising their two children without any inconvenience, and the kids are thriving. Since I was most worried about the children, hearing that put my mind at ease. As for us, my daughter and I moved out temporarily, but upon closer consideration, we hadn't done anything wrong. Since the apartment we originally lived in was a condominium, there was still a mortgage, but my ex-husband agreed to cover that as part of the living expenses. My daughter and I don't need to pay rent, and for now, we can get by with child support, compensation, and a little extra. As for my ex-husband, he can't reduce his workload no matter how tough it gets, because he has to cover the mortgage on the apartment where my daughter and I live, as well as the monthly child support. Due to the compensation, we maintain minimal contact, but I heard he's decided to take on another job as a caregiver. In addition to caregiving at a facility, he's also doing home care visits. I hope you don't push yourself too hard financially.
But if I don't work hard, I won't be able to pay.
Honestly, I was worried that my ex-husband, who isn't much of a workaholic, was working so hard. But like Emily, he brought this upon himself, so there's nothing to be done. Since I wouldn't be satisfied without receiving the agreed upon money, I decided not to say anything more. As long as he earns the money honestly, it doesn't matter how he makes it. Is work going well for you?
It's not something you need to worry about.
Since he's saying that, it should be fine. Still, he's the only dad my daughter has. I don't think I'm as strict as a demon myself. We decided to set our own promises and celebrate together once a year on our daughter's birthday. It seems like Kenny is using that as motivation to work hard. But what he did is absolutely unforgivable. I want him to live on with that in mind. Lily, do you feel lonely without Daddy?
But I have Mommy, so I'm okay.
Really? That's good. Thanks to our daughter informing me that Kenny liked Emily more than me, we were able to start anew. It might be ironic, but it's insulting for me to continue living as if nothing happened. Now my daughter and I are putting our hearts into moving forward together.
Mom, I want a pink backpack.
Should we go pick one out together next time?
Yay! I'm so excited to go to school.
School can be tough with studying, you know. Are you sure?
Mom, I'm aiming to be the top student.
Well, I can count on you. And that's how we're happily discussing our future together.
I filed for divorce.
Get out in a week.
Bob was looking at me with a hateful gaze, holding hands with a woman standing next to him. He seems to be flaunting their closeness. Occasionally, they would intertwine their arms or goof around, making me wonder what I'm being shown. It was a sudden illness, but I was discharged from the hospital without issue. For some reason, Bob's name is missing from the official documents. I hurried home, and unexpectedly, there was a woman I didn't know. I had heard that Bob took advantage of the company's welfare benefits to care for me, using caregiving leave for an affair. What kind of nerve does he have? He was always the type to discard things, whether they belonged to someone else or were unnecessary for his life. It seems he has decided to discard me as well. I never expected to be treated with such disdain while married. He thinks that he is the one who chooses and that he is absolutely right. Otherwise, he couldn't treat someone this horribly. However, I have already made moves so that Bob can't talk his way out of this. He's the only one who doesn't know anything. I'm Sarah, a caregiver working in a nursing home, and I'm turning 40 this year. After graduating from college, I worked as a salesperson for a while, but after I quit my job, I worked as a caregiver. I met my husband, Bob, when I was 35, through work. The cafeteria at the nursing home where I work is managed by an external company. The owner is very particular about the food, which is why extra care is taken with the meals for those we serve.
Eating good food gives you the energy to live.
That's the motto of the owner, who compared several companies before choosing the current one. It's a relief that a representative from the company visits our nursing home 2 or 3 times a month. Bob was in charge of the company that ran the cafeteria. Over his regular visits, we began to chat casually. Working for a food-related company, his daily life was meticulous, which attracted me. It's rare to see a single man living so neatly, which was refreshing. His day starts with favorite bakery bread and coffee, and ends with a vegetable-rich dinner and relaxing with herbal tea.
I'm surprised to hear that Bob lives so meticulously. I'm always in a rush. I'd like to learn from you.
It's nothing special, just normal everyday things.
Being able to do normal so well is what makes you Bob. Where should I start copying?
Then I'd recommend herbal tea. I'll bring some for you to try next time.
That herbal tea became a regular topic of conversation. The herbal tea Bob introduced me to was delicious, not just for health, but something I wanted to drink daily. Hi Bob, the herbal tea you recommended last time was so good. I even bought some for myself. I think I can keep this up daily.
That's great. That herbal tea has a calming effect. I thought it was perfect for you.
A calming effect.
You seemed tired, so I thought if your heart settled, your feelings might change.
Bob's gaze was filled with kindness. I'm always looking after others, never myself. To have someone who sees me like this, I felt a happiness I had never known before.
Ever since we first met, I've been curious about you, Sarah. I'm so glad we can talk like this. If it's all right with you, would you consider dating me?
My answer was already decided. If you're okay with me, I'd be happy to. I've led a life that, by my own admission, hasn't been very remarkable. After college, I was hired by a company as a salesperson but couldn't achieve good sales figures, always getting yelled at. I'm called the company's burden, useless every day. I quit out of frustration. Then I happened upon a job at a nursing home. Working there, I realized the depth of caregiving and continued to study for my qualifications while working, even during night shifts. It was tough putting myself last while working so hard. I can't believe someone is watching me. Despite our busy schedules, we find time to spend together. Dates with Bob are usually simple things like shopping or movies, especially shopping for things we'll use when we live together in the future. Those moments feel so happy.
How about we get matching megs? We can use them when we start living together.
Sounds good. I've actually been wanting a simple mug like that.
That's great. Just thinking about living together makes me so excited.
We gradually prepare things that we'll use when we're married and living together. Once, while sitting at a cafe during our shopping trip, Bob suddenly turned serious. What's wrong? You look so serious all of a sudden. Do you have a stomachache?
No, it's not.
Don't push yourself. Should we call it a day?
I can't wait anymore. While shopping and thinking about living with you, I just couldn't contain my feelings anymore. Will you marry me?
As he said this, Bob gazed at me intently. In my whole life, have I ever felt as happy as I do at this moment? Yes, I'd love to.
Oh good. I thought you might say no.
I had no idea you were thinking about it so seriously.
Today's been the most nerve-wracking day of my life.
The tension that had been building suddenly broke, and Bob looked relieved. Well, the answer was already decided. Every day with Bob seems like it would be a happy one. And so, Bob and I got married. We both lived alone, but since Bob's apartment was quite spacious for one person, we decided to keep it. I brought only what I needed and moved into Bob's place to start our married life. It still felt like the meticulously kept home of a person who lives thoughtfully, just as Bob had described. I knew this from the numerous times I had visited Bob's apartment before. Everything was perfectly in order, not a speck of dust in sight. Thinking that our new life together was starting here made my heart race. What kind of happiness awaits us from here? Little did I know, however, that the excitement and anticipation would soon be shattered. 6 months into our marriage, I was preparing for a night shift at home. I usually take a midnight snack, my uniform, and a towel with me for night shifts, but I couldn't find some of my things. My tumbler, a recent gift from a friend that I really liked. I looked for my towel and tumbler, but for some reason I couldn't find them. Could Bob have accidentally taken them to work? But he will notice before he takes it. No matter how much I searched, I couldn't find them. So I decided to use the spare towel in my locker and buy some tea at the convenience store on my way to work. I went to work as I had planned. Work went smoothly as usual. I was eager to get home quickly, take a shower, and sleep in bed because I was so tired lately. And more than anything, I hadn't seen Bob much recently because of my night shifts, and I missed him. Rushing with those feelings, I hurried home. When I got home, Bob was in the living room, getting ready to go to work. As usual, he was pressing his favorite shirt with an iron.
Hi, Sarah.
Bob, good timing. There's something I want to ask you. Is that okay?
Are you asking about the tumbler?
I hadn't expected Bob to bring up the topic of the tumbler. Since he mentioned the tumbler, maybe he knows something about it. Yes, I can't find my tumbler and my towel. I looked for them before work, but I couldn't find them. Do you know anything about them?
Oh, really?
I thought I brought it from my old place.
Well, I've already thrown it out.
I couldn't believe Bob's words that he had clearly thrown it away. Why? There was no need to just throw things out without asking.
Things need to be organized properly.
He looked at me with a puzzled face, as if wondering what he had done wrong. I was shocked to learn that he had thrown it away without my permission. The tumbler was a birthday gift from an old friend, and because it was sentimental to me, I couldn't stay silent after hearing it was thrown away without my consent. Then Bob sighed while looking at me.
Using such a tasteless thing. I didn't know that was your style, Sarah. I got rid of the stuff you don't need, and that's how you talk to me.
It infuriated me that he could throw away my things and act as if he had done nothing wrong. However, I was so angry that I couldn't find the words to speak.
Is that all? Well, I have to go now. By the way, Sarah, make sure you sort out your unnecessary things.
Unnecessary things? What does he mean? I decluttered when we got married and moved into this house. It was supposed to be a new married life moving into Bob's house, which he had lived in alone, so I had carefully organized my belongings to not overwhelm the space. Realizing what Bob might mean, I decided to look around the house. Although I was exhausted and sleepy from my night shift, a bad feeling made both disappear. My suspicion was confirmed. Some items that should have come from my home were missing. Clothes, shoes, bags, and accessories that I had bought during my single years. I hadn't taken inventory of everything, but it looked like quite a bit had been thrown out. I can't believe he would dispose of other people's things. I had carefully selected and brought only the essentials for our new life together. Honestly, I don't have that many personal items, and it's not like they were cluttering up the place. And yet he threw them out. It appears that items with slightly bold colors or characters have been disposed of. Probably, he threw out things that didn't match his taste or the home's interior. If he had just told me, I would have considered whether to dispose of them myself. Why do it without asking? I was so shocked by the disposal of my important items that I couldn't move for a while. Maybe there's something wrong with me for not realizing earlier what kind of person he was, but still, there was no reason for him to dispose of them like that. I felt my head going blank from the shock. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I noticed, the outside was tinted with the color of the sunset. I had been sitting in shock ever since I got home and discovered that Bob had disposed of my things. I looked at the clock, and it was almost 6 p.m. Realizing that Bob would be home soon, I tried to stand up but felt dizzy. Honestly, I had no appetite, and I couldn't think of what to make for dinner. While I was dealing with this, Bob came home.
I'm home. What have you been doing all day?
Welcome back, Bob. I'm not feeling very well.
Oh, really? What about dinner?
He seemed uninterested in my condition as he took off his suit and sprayed it. Sorry, I'm not feeling well and have no appetite, so I haven't made anything. There's some meat marinated in sauce, though. Do you want it?
That's fine.
He responded grumpily and heavily sat down on the sofa to start fiddling with his phone.
How long are you going to sit there? You're kind of in the way.
His glare seemed to say I was a nuisance. It was hard to believe this was the same Bob who used to care about me the most. Maybe something unpleasant happened at work. Thinking this, I quietly decided to leave the room. Just then, Bob called out to me.
Hey, are you just going to leave without saying anything? Don't you have anything to say to me?
Until we got married, I thought his eyes were kind, but now they feel cold. As I felt the chill in his gaze, I replied, "Well, sorry for not having dinner ready. I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to bed early." I realized too late that he was such an unkind person. Can I really live well with him from now on? That worry kept spinning in my head. Maybe it's because I have a lot on my mind, but I've never felt this sick before. I get dizzy easily now, and I'm always fighting nausea. Honestly, I can't work like this. On my days off, I spend all day in bed, and I'm barely making it to work. Even though I used to bounce back after a hard day's work, now I'm falling apart. The severe illness troubled me so much that I decided to consult at a major hospital. The cause wasn't clear, but I was admitted for testing because I felt so unwell. After several days in the hospital, the cause was still unknown, and my condition didn't improve, so my stay was extended. I was worried that Bob might be angry when he visited me in the hospital room. "I'm sorry for causing trouble when you're busy with work, Bob. The cause isn't clear yet, but I'll get better soon, so please bear with me."
Don't say sorry. I'll support you as much as I can until you get better.
Bob had returned to the kind smile I saw before we got married. The Bob I sight home recently must have been upset because of work or something. I reassured myself. "Thank you."
Okay, I have to go now. Oh, and I'll take leave for caregiving a partner, so call me anytime you need.
After saying that, Bob went home. I remembered Bob once mentioned his workplace's welfare benefits, including time off for family care. I didn't get the details about how many days or the exact terms, but I remember thinking it's different with big companies. While I wanted him by my side because I felt vulnerable, this leave was a blessing since I might need him for various small tasks. I immediately contacted Bob to bring some things to the hospital, but all I got was his voicemail, no matter how many times I tried. Finding this strange, I went to sleep, but the next day, I couldn't get through to him again. It was definitely unusual, so I left a message, but it never got read. While feeling anxious, I continued my treatment to cure the mysterious illness. Thanks to focusing on treatment, I was able to be discharged about 3 weeks later. Even when I let Bob know I was being discharged, he still didn't read the message. Worried something might have happened to Bob, I was anxious. All I wanted was to get home as soon as possible. Before that, I remembered I needed to submit some documents. I feel like there was a document I had to submit at the city hall. It felt tough to do right after recovering, and I was more worried about Bob, but it seemed too hard to go back later, so I stopped by the city hall on my way home. There was something off about the document issued at the city hall. It should have printed data for all family members, but strangely, only my name was on it, since it was supposed to print data for both Bob and me. I had a bad feeling. Rushing home, I felt a presence in the house that wasn't Bob's. I smelled a perfume that Bob never uses as I entered from the front door. When I walked into the living room, there was Bob and a woman I didn't know. "Who is this?" As they turned around, smiling, the woman clinging to him spoke up.
Is this the person Bob was talking about?
Yo, but it's okay now.
I had no idea what was okay. In that moment, part of me was bizarrely calm, like something out of a TV drama. I became dazed and accidentally dropped my bag. In the process, the documents I had gotten from the city hall fell out of the bag. I composed myself and decided to ask Bob something. "Hey, who is this person?" Also, when I got the documents from the city hall, only my name came up. "Do you know anything about this?" Bob replied with a smirk.
I filed for divorce.
For a moment, I thought I had misheard, but looking at Bob, it didn't seem like a joke. "Wait, what do you mean, a divorce application?"
That's right. I don't need an extra burden. It's only natural to get rid of what you don't need.
He snorted disdainfully and glared at me.
I thought marrying you would make my life a bit easier, but that's not the case at all. Also, you're always sick and hospitalized with no clear discharge date, which is just too much trouble.
That's true. I wouldn't leave Bob alone.
It's best to let go of unnecessary belongings.
You have 1 week to move out.
Mary laughed hysterically.
Mary is so kind. I really wish you could leave right now.
As they spoke, they intertwined their hands. I couldn't understand what I was being shown. This was the house where I started living following my marriage to Bob, and I wondered what these two were trying to say. Bob threw my large duffel bag at my feet.
My boss is old-fashioned, saying a man isn't really an adult until he's married. I just married because he said he'd give me a big project if I did.
But I thought you married me because you loved me.
I never said I loved you. I just thought you were an easy option for marriage. But if I'm going to date, it should be with someone pretty, right?
Indeed, Mary was dressed like a modern, beautiful office lady. Her nails were neatly painted, and her hair was stylishly curled.
See, timing is everything. The person who can act quickly wins. So, when are you leaving?
Bob looked at me, urging for an answer. So, Bob had snagged a reasonably attractive woman he often saw at work to improve his chances for a promotion and to impress his boss. It seems I was only needed as a wife in name for his career advancement and not truly loved. I understood Bob's feelings very well. Of course, my answer was clear. I'm leaving right now. With that, I left the house in 3 seconds. After my discharge, I had planned to stay at my parents' house in the neighboring town, so I had already sent my daily necessities there. My work essentials were in my locker at work, so there were no issues. I stuffed the documents that were next to the table into my bag and left the house. The documents I put in my bag were from a detective agency and an envelope with Bob's company name printed on it. Then I headed to a certain place. My destination was Bob's office. I had been there 2 or 3 times before for various reasons. Actually, mail from Bob's company had been forwarded to me. During my hospital stay, items that I had set up for mail forwarding were delivered to my room. The envelope addressed to me contained several forms necessary for family caregiving leave. It seemed they sent it because not only Bob had to fill them out, but as the care recipient, I had to complete some forms as well. I went to Bob's workplace to submit the documents directly. Bob's boss, who had thrown a celebratory dinner at the time of our marriage, happened to be there, so I handed them directly to him. He looked at me in surprise and repeatedly checked the white board in the office. The white board in the office had a big magnet labeled caregiving leave, and below it was written return date undetermined. That meant, in Bob's office, he was known as the husband who was off work to care for his wife, whose return was uncertain. And here I was, the wife, all better and delivering documents in person, so naturally, he was surprised. Bob's boss asked me various questions, and I answered honestly. I talked about the reasons for my hospitalization, how often I received visits, and the details of the support I was supposed to get. Bob's boss looked at me with an expression that seemed to say he couldn't believe it. According to Bob's boss, the things Bob had told him were completely different from my report, and he was confused. However, after comparing the medical records and hospital receipts I submitted, along with the records of the days Bob had taken off, he seemed to believe that I was telling the truth. Then I submitted another document. It was a document proving our divorce, and Bob's boss was speechless. If someone who claimed to have taken leave to care for his wife turns out to be divorced, the boss couldn't just stay silent. It seemed like the company decided it was no different from taking illegitimate leave, and he informed me that some form of disciplinary action was unavoidable. Indeed, what Bob had done was completely taking illegitimate leave, and on top of that, for an affair. Taking time off under false pretenses for an affair and filing for divorce without consent. There's no way I could forgive that. When I left Bob's workplace, I noticed dozens of missed calls from Bob. Wondering if he still had something more to say, I was about to put away my phone when Bob called again.
Hey, you better not have said anything unnecessary.
I wanted to retort at his opening remark, but I held back and replied, "Unnecessary, like what?"
Whatever you say, everyone will believe me anyway. Don't get it twisted.
Bob said so and hung up. Was that supposed to be a warning to me? He must be assuming that I wouldn't say anything excessive. I went to a law firm and consulted about the divorce and suing for damages for Bob's affair. I provided the evidence and information about the other party that I had previously obtained from a detective agency and decided to claim damages from both Bob and his affair partner. I couldn't let them get away with just taking the good parts and ignoring the rest. The lawyer worked quickly, and within a few days, Bob and his affair partner both received the documents for the claim for damages. I received panicked calls from both of them.
Hey, what the hell are you doing?
You're just the one who didn't get chosen by Bob.
They were yapping like noisy puppies, making my ears hurt just by holding the phone. Just doing what's right. Did you really think this would end without anything happening?
Sarah, always doing something extra. When did you know?
Since when? Quite a while ago. No matter how much I work night shifts, it's strange not to see Bob for days on end.
That is.
Thought you wouldn't be suspected just by saying it's work? I'm the type who wants to know if something feels off, so I had it investigated. I could hear Bob breathing heavily over the phone, obviously angry.
Investigated. You're a bastard.
To think, married but secretly meeting with an affair partner, and I hear she's someone from a company client.
You marry is, and where she's from isn't your concern, and if anything happens to her, I won't forgive you.
He seems to be out of his mind. He cannot understand the situation he is in now. And you have time to worry about others? Well, just stop causing trouble for everyone else. There was one more issue. Mary, Bob's affair partner, hadn't paid a dime in damages. Was she thinking that if she stayed silent, she wouldn't have to pay, or did she truly believe she wasn't in the wrong? Either way, I couldn't let this slide. Determined not to be walked over, I consulted my lawyer again. Ultimately, we decided to garnish Mary's wages. Once her wages were garnished, it must have become known at her workplace that she had been having an affair. Mary kept calling me. I didn't want to pick up the phone, but I didn't want to put off the hassle, so I took it.
Hey, what were you thinking? Because of you, it looks like I'm going to get fired.
Apparently, the affair and subsequent poaching had been exposed, and now Mary and Bob were both being pointed at behind their backs at work. Both Mary and Bob, though they worked in different places, were apparently being given the choice between transferring to a remote sales office or resigning. Well, if someone like you who cheats is around, it's bound to sour the workplace atmosphere, right? Just choose between transferring or resigning.
No way. I'm not the type who can live in the countryside. If you hadn't meddled, I could have continued like this.
You think you could have continued like this? I asked, feeling incredulous.
Yeah. I could get married and Bob would be happy to marry me, and then we'd all live happily ever after.
I felt a bit of pity for Mary. Knowing nothing may be a pity in a way. You seriously believe that? On what basis can you say he won't cheat again?
If there's love, there won't be any cheating. You don't need to tell me that.
Fine then. If my leftovers are good enough for you, go ahead. But don't think you can odds the damages. I said what I wanted to say and hang up on Mary's call. People who do such shameful things can't just happily move on. Thinking they could secure their own happiness after cheating is a big mistake. Rumor has it, both Bob and Mary are having a rough time. Stressed by being shunned at work, they fled their jobs by resigning. After resigning, their job hunt was complicated by the fact that word gets around fast, and their bad reputation had spread to surprising places. Naturally, No one was eager to hire someone known for cheating, and they seemed to be struggling to find work. About 6 months after the divorce, Bob called me. "Hello, what now?"
Hey, could I possibly work at your place? I've got nowhere left to work, and I keep getting rejected everywhere, making life unsustainable.
"Because you've done something wrong, haven't you?"
I was thinking, maybe I could work for your place.
I was flabbergasted by his audacity. "Maybe I could work for your place? Don't joke around. You should finally realize that this is all your own fault." Then Bob hung up. I had never spoken to Bob so bluntly before, not during our relationship or marriage. Finally saying what I really thought felt liberating. Since then, I've continued to work at the nursing home. After spending some time at my parents' house post as judge, I've returned to work and am enjoying living alone again. I find my job at the nursing home constantly engaging because there's always something new to learn. It's exciting because today is the only day, even if you've been working for a decade or so. One day, I received a promotion offer. They had noticed my commitment and wanted me to lead my colleagues as a chief. I had never held a leadership role before, so I felt both happy and a bit overwhelmed by the sudden offer. However, it was an opportunity I wanted to embrace and give my best. Additionally, the results from my caregiving certification exam came back, and I passed on the first try. With this certification and my promotion, living alone won't be a problem financially. I want to believe in my potential and keep challenging myself.
So that's what was going on. As I peeked from a distance at my in-laws' house, the moment I learned the truth, I was speechless. What were Anne's husband and his family thinking when they looked at her all this time? How many times have they deceived her with a calm face? Unforgivable. I'll make sure they all go to hell, no matter what. My name is Emma. I'm 45 years old and was just trying on my outfit for ceremonies and events when I realized I couldn't zip it up around my stomach. I thought I hadn't changed much in shape, but clearly, I've gained some visceral fat. The first time I wore this outfit, I was 30. My younger sister Anne, who had a weak heart since childhood, passed away at the young age of 27. It was caused by heart failure after pneumonia. Ironically, I was the only one who had a conversation with Anne on that fateful day I visited her hospital room. She had been married for just 2 years. She must have had so many things she still wanted to do. She never would have imagined leaving this world like this.
I want to walk under the fall leaves when I get discharged.
Remembering Anne's smiling face as she said that fills me with an indescribable sadness. The day of the funeral, which I attended without being able to accept the tragedy that had befallen my beloved sister, something happened. It was just before the ceremony began. When I went to the restroom, I saw Anne's husband, James, on the phone at a nearby lounge.
"Yeah, after the ceremony, it'll settle down a bit in about a month. Yeah, I guess it's best to keep it low until the first anniversary."
I don't usually eavesdrop on people's calls, but I couldn't help but be curious this time. Keep it low until the first anniversary? What's that about? It must be about Dan. From the casual way James spoke, it didn't sound like he was talking to a coworker. All his family were at the ceremony. Who was he talking to?
"Sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. No, the kid's fine. No one's caught on. My wife and her family don't have a clue that I have a child. Just relax at our place.
What? I was taken aback. Did he just say he has a child? By the way, Anne and James didn't have children. They chose not to because they weren't sure Anne's body could handle childbirth. They were each other's first spouses, and we had never heard anything about James having a child. What in the world is going on? Honestly, I was just confused by James's nonsensical conversation and couldn't sort out my thoughts. But then, I remembered the desperate words Anne tried to tell me just before she was taken to the surgery room.
My parents' house, there's a child.
Soon after, Anne lost consciousness and passed away without waking up a few days later, so I never heard the rest. I was the only one who heard those words. Until now, I was too shocked by the loss of Anne to even think about what those words meant. But then, the word, my parents' house from Anne, and just relax at our place from James. If it was the house they lived in together, Anne would have said, our house, not my parents' house. And there's no child at my parents' house. Suddenly, it hit me. Maybe, just maybe, the child with the person James was speaking to is living at James's parents' house. When that thought crossed my mind, I couldn't stay put. If that was really the case, I couldn't forgive James. Desperate to check my hunch, I quickly left the funeral home after offering incense to Anne and headed to James's parents' house. James's parents' house is within walking distance from the house where Anne and James lived.
I'm an only child and my parents are elderly, so I want to live close to them.
James himself had decided to live here for that reason.
I'm anxious about whether I can get along even if our family interactions increase.
Anne complained about setting up their home near her in-laws' place. But in reality, since it was so close, she hardly ever visited, and there was virtually no family interaction. Maybe that's why at the funeral, James's parents hardly seemed to mourn Anne's misfortune. They were fiddling with their cell phones whenever they had a moment, to the point of being somewhat appalling. Well, if the relationship was that distant because of the in-law situation, maybe it's to be expected. But they could have at least pretended a bit more at a time like this. As I recalled the parents' attitude and arrived at James's family home, I hesitated to ring the doorbell. There shouldn't have been anyone home. Everyone was supposed to be at Anne's funeral. But what if someone did come out? What would I say to them? I had no concrete evidence of James cheating. Facing the unknown without enough information, I wasn't confident about winning. While pondering, I went around to the garden and sneakily peeked inside the house. The windows weren't closed, and I could see everything inside. Wait, is there really someone inside? Just as I was startled by the thought.
Stop squirming, wait. Hey, don't run around.
A child came running out into the garden, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. I quickly hid and watched the two from the shadows. The child's face looked a lot like James. He was still unsteady on his feet. Probably just started walking a few months ago. The woman was about the same age as James. The area around her mouth looked similar to the child's, and she must be the mother. Oh, had James really betrayed Anne? Since when? When did Anne realize this? As the pieces of my suspicions neatly fit together, more and more concerns popped up, and I couldn't clear my head. In fact, I even started to tear up. I will never forgive him. I swore to myself that I would make sure James pays for what he did to Anne on her behalf. Later, I returned to the funeral hall. My sudden departure from the ceremony had raised suspicions among all attendees. I couldn't stay there because of the shock of losing Anne. When I said that, it seemed to convince everyone. It's unlikely they think I went to James's house, but I was relieved that I didn't arouse any strange suspicions from James or his family. The next day, I decided to hire the only detective agency in the area to investigate James. But it turned out that the agency was run by Sarah, a friend of Anne. She had also attended the funeral, so I remembered her well. And Anne had also hired her company to investigate her husband, Sarah told me.
After I reported the results of the investigation, Anne's health deteriorated and she passed away. I really shouldn't be breaking confidentiality, but Anne really looked up to you as her sister, so I'm sure she'd forgive me for telling you.
With that, Sarah informed me of the circumstances under which Anne had hired the detective agency and the results of the investigation. Once, despite being engaged, Anne and James almost broke up. The reason was James's so-called cold feet. With just half a year left until the wedding, after the marriage registration was complete, he brought it up.
I'm not confident I can protect Anne with her weak heart. I want to keep some distance.
After much deliberation, Anne agreed to James's request and chose to put some distance between them.
I really want to marry Anne after all.
About 2 months later, James came back apologizing, and they were able to smoothly proceed and have their wedding. Despite being newlyweds, James worked tirelessly on weekends, aspiring to one day buy a house for Anne, who he had troubled so much. This meant they spent considerably less time together, yet Anne talked about it as if it was a sweet gesture. It's all good now. I thought it was sweet, but in reality, right after their engagement, James had started an affair with a childhood friend, Lisa. He and Lisa had dated before, but broke up over minor disagreements. After meeting and getting engaged to Anne, James still harbored feelings for his old flame. Then, Lisa reached out to him, and sparks reignited. Moreover, his cold feet excuse was a lie. Around that time, Lisa got pregnant, and James, who was pondering whether to divorce Anne and marry her, had even leaked this dilemma to his friends. Lisa insisted, "I won't demand marriage if you stay with me, but I'm having this baby." He didn't want to leave her, yet he also didn't want to tell his legitimate wife, Anne, about the child outside their marriage. Nor could he deny his child with the woman he loved. Though he didn't want her to have the baby, she was adamant about it. Stuck and desperate, James consulted his parents.
"Since it's our first grandchild, let her have the baby."
The parents were the ones who suggested it. His parents had initially pushed for his marriage to Lisa, the childhood friend they knew well. Plus, they were not fond of Anne, who was frail, and they often complained about not being able to see a grandchild.
They said Anne is frail and won't last long anyway. After she's gone, acknowledge the child and remarry Lisa.
The mistress wholeheartedly agreed to this outrageous plan. It was a favorable situation for James, too.
If that's what my parents say, then it might be an option.
James agreed, and it was settled that Lisa would have the baby. Lisa was an only child like James, and her parents had already passed away. Therefore, James's parents frequently visited Lisa's home across the street to help out during the pregnancy and after the birth. The claim that James was working on weekends right after his wedding was a lie. He was likely visiting the newborn at that time. There were eyewitness accounts from neighbors of James frequently visiting Lisa's house. This suggests that the reason for moving close to his elderly parents was also a lie. More likely, he wanted to be close to see his child. As the child grew, "We want to see our grandchild grow up close," said James' parents, and it seems the child and Lisa spent more time at James's house. That's why they found excuses to keep Anne away from James' parents' home, eventually stopping her visits altogether. It's appalling how the entire family seemed to endorse the affair. Anne only became aware of James's infidelity about a month ago. Feeling unwell, Anne had come home early from work and was resting. He probably didn't realize that Anne was there. James, who usually never emails or calls at home, came back home a bit earlier that day and was on the phone.
I got off work early. Can I come over now? What? My wife? She's at work, so she won't notice. She's been feeling sick a lot lately and goes to bed early. If I say I'm working late, I can stay longer. Yeah, I also want to live with you guys soon. Every time she says she's not feeling well, I kind of hope she won't be long now.
Imagine how Anne felt hearing that from her sickbed. Just the thought is heart-wrenching. This incident led Anne to realize James's infidelity, and she turned to Sarah's detective agency for help. The investigation results came out, and just when she was about to confront James with a divorce, she collapsed and passed away.
Anne must have felt so betrayed.
Sarah concluded, looking down. That must be true. I want to avenge Anne. I couldn't stand the thought of her in-laws getting to enjoy their grandchild while James and his mistress remarried as if nothing had happened. However, having just grasped the whole situation, I was unsure what to do next. After some thought, a light bulb went off. Sarah, are you good with computers?
Leave it to me.
She replied with a smile. The next day, I headed to James' family home. When I rang the doorbell, Mary, Anne's mother-in-law, appeared on the monitor and looked surprised to see me.
"Oh, Emma, what brings you here?"
she exclaimed with a slightly shaky voice. "I have something to discuss with you about Anne's personal belongings. Do you have a moment?" Mary fell silent and then the intercom turned off. Maybe they won't let me in. Feeling a bit anxious, I waited a while longer.
Emma, I'm sorry. The place was a mess, so I was just tidying up. Please come in.
James appeared. "Oh, James, you're here. Perfect," I said with a smile, which made his expression stiffen. He thinks I don't know about the affair, but his face betrays his guilt. In fact, I had just seen the mistress and child through the window. What he had cleaned up must have been those two. Wonder which room they're hiding in now. As James's parents, and he awkwardly eyed me while ushering me into the room. I took a sip of the tea they offered, and as if reading the room, James asked,
What about Anne's belongings?
"Oh yes, it's this," I said, placing a photo on the table. Upon seeing the photo, James and his parents froze.
"James, who is this?"
Oh, no, I don't know her.
The photo showed James and a woman embracing in bed. "This was sent to our house the other day. It seems, James, you've been having an affair." Both parents glared at James, who frantically shook his head.
Wait, I don't remember this photo.
James exclaimed. As he protested, I produced more photos. Each showed James kissing the woman or on a date at a nearby amusement park. People who cheat don't say, "I remember it," do they? I muttered, looking down.
You're such a child.
Mary raised her voice.
It's not true, Mom. I don't know anything about this.
Lies. Then what about these photos? And you have a child with Lisa?
A child? I quickly reacted to Mary's words. Anne's father-in-law opened his mouth, looking guilty. Is this child the one you're talking about? So, Lisa is this woman? I then showed a photo of James holding a child.
Why?
The whole in-law family was at a loss for words.
No, that's not true.
James kept shouting.
This worthless son.
Mary slapped James on the cheek.
Did you have other children too?
Listen to me, Mom, Dad.
But Mary and her husband, Anne's father-in-law, wouldn't listen to James and repeatedly berated him for betraying their beloved grandchild.
What's wrong with you, bringing such nonsense here?
It was sent to the house. I don't understand it either. I came here wanting an explanation. James, you do have a child, right? I glared at James, and he was at a loss for words. Well, honestly, James is right in a way. James doesn't have any other affair partners besides Lisa. I wouldn't tell them for the world as I might get sued for defamation later, but this photo was a composite I had Sarah create. I could have used a real photo of the actual mistress and child, but I had my reasons for using a composite. You do have a child, don't you? My plan was to corner him into slipping up, but Mary slipped up sooner than I expected, which was lucky. Your silence means it's true, right? Just now, Mary mentioned there's a child, and something about Lisa? Mary and Ronnie froze on the spot at my words. The content sent with these photos said that these kids are being taken care of at this house.
That's not true.
Mary quickly denied my words. Is that true?
There's no way that's true.
Then, please show me every room.
What?
Without waiting for their permission, I stood up and headed to the next room.
Wait, don't just snoop around someone's house.
James raised his voice. If there's nothing to hide, just show me. I don't mind if it's a bit messy.
It's not about that.
Then what is the problem?
That is.
Without waiting for James's response, I broke free from Mary and Anne's father-in-law's attempts to stop me and peered into the next room. Not here. So I went upstairs. I was quite hindered and scraped my knees, but this is nothing compared to the pain Anne suffered. I'm willing to endure a few scratches. As I shoved past the in-laws and kicked James aside, the moment I opened the door to the upstairs room, there they were. In the room, Lisa and a child were sitting on the bed. Oh my, a different woman and child from the photo. What's this about?
This is.
James turned pale at my words.
Photo?
Lisa looked at me puzzled. Yes, it seems James was having an affair while my sister was still around. Look, this photo. When I showed Lisa the composite photo, her face quickly twisted in anger, and she crushed the photo in her hand.
What is this? You had another woman.
No, Lisa, it's not like that. Listen.
Lisa was furious, and James turned pale. So, there's another woman, so you are one of James's women too. I chimed in, grateful for the admission. Mary and Anne's father-in-law were at a loss for words in this turbulent scene, holding their heads.
Why? You said I was the main one, so it was okay not to get married. I just wanted to have your child and stay by your side, but there were others.
It's not like that, Lisa. This is probably some misunderstanding. A look-alike or a composite.
Probably. Why can't you say it's definitely not true? I can't trust you anymore.
Lisa's distrust peaked when James, flustered, failed to outright deny it after the momentary shock of composite. A man this indecisive isn't worth your trust. Anne's life was also ruined by this man. My stern advice tightened Lisa's face. In truth, Anne's life was ruined by Lisa too. But she must be aware of that given her expression, so there's no need to say it. Right now, I need to act like I'm on Lisa's side to get her to listen to me. Neither the in-law family nor Lisa will find happiness, which aligns with my goal.
Right.
Lisa muttered.
Wait, Lisa. I'm serious about you.
James desperately tried to convince Lisa, but I interrupted. You were not serious about Anne, but in front of Lisa, you're all about serious, and even vowed to marry her, right? You really aren't worth believing. Lisa's face clouded over at my words. The fact of the composite photo, and doubts about whether his words to her were sincere, began to set in. Good. If you were serious, you wouldn't be juggling two people from the start. Whatever the reason, you'd stick to one, right? As I emphatically repeated the words, Lisa's face grew increasingly somber. James was as pale as could be. Lisa could feel herself drifting away from him.
Let's break up, James. I don't want to be just a convenient woman for you. After seeing that photo, I just can't believe it. I could handle being the second, but I definitely don't want to be the third woman.
Please, listen to me.
Moved by Lisa's tears, James impulsively grabbed her hand and yelled. However, Lisa shook off his hand.
I don't need recognition, just stay out of my life.
Saying this, she took her child and left the house. As his parents lost the child and the prospective daughter-in-law, they got depressed. I mentally celebrated with a fist pump. Later, I made James write a notice of termination of family relations, cutting off all ties with our family. Anne's inheritance, which was supposed to go to James, was also successfully waived. My father, a bit intimidating, had heard everything from me and went to yell at the in-law family.
I don't want to have anything to do with this house anymore, so waive the inheritance.
The in-laws, completely intimidated, persuaded James as well. Well, Anne's estate was meager, but it was good that not even a penny of Anne's went to him. Actually, on the day I brought the photo to James's house, a window happened to be open. Because of that, our loud conversation was clearly audible outside. Together with some revelations from a friend of Lisa who lived nearby, everything that happened at James's house became known around the neighborhood. As a result, rumors spread that that house is full of debauchery. James quit his job and left the area with his parents, as if fleeing. Meanwhile, about 2 months later, Lisa suddenly appeared at my family's home. She came to thank me for opening her eyes and to apologize for the disrespect she had shown to Anne, bringing $50,000 with her. I should appreciate Lisa's feelings, but the pain Anne suffered couldn't be resolved with money. It doesn't seem right for us to forgive someone for something unforgivable just because they gave us money. I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't want money from someone who has done such dirty deeds. We didn't accept any of it. Instead, we had the money donated to a nearby children's home where Anne used to work. What? You think that kind of woman would actually make the donation? Don't worry, I went with her to make sure she really did donate it. Anne would surely be happy with this use of the funds. I hope that the children who have a future ahead of them will be happy, also for Anne's sake. Embarrassingly enough, I struggled with sister loss for a while and even suffered mentally. There was a time when it got so bad that I quit my job. But I've gradually recovered, and now I'm working in administration at Sarah's detective agency. Actually, since that incident, Sarah and I have become very close. We both lost someone important in such a horrible way, and I think that created a bond between us. And despite not having a good image of marriage because of what happened to Anne, I married my boyfriend of 4 years last year. The COVID-19 pandemic and the experience of losing Anne made me realize you never know when you might not be able to be with your loved ones, which pushed me to make the decision to marry. I want to live without regrets, making sure I spend as much time as possible with my loved ones. Watch over me, Anne. I'll live a long life, not just for myself but for you too, and when I get there, let me tell you all the fun things and what you didn't know about here. I'm going to keep living life to the fullest. Yeah.